The next model that I am going to demonstrate is the circular pattern feature. So there's two different ways we can use circular pattern. We can use it in a sketch like we did for the whole model, or we can do it as a feature, which is what I'm going to demonstrate here. And the directions for this model start on slide 23. So I'm going to start by going to create, and I'm going to choose document. Again, this is 122, and this is going to be circular pattern feature, and then my last name. And I'm going to hit OK. And this has me create this object using the Revolve tool again. So I'm actually going to create my sketch on the right view. And so I'm going to use my view cube to rotate to the right. I'm going to shift this guy just out of the way. And if you look on slide 23, in the lower left area, we do have a blueprint to create this part. So I'm going to start with my line tool. And I'm just going to draw that basic shape. You'll note that I am staying away from the origin lines because they tend to make things act a little funny. Ooh, I got really lucky that time and was able to connect them without trimming. That intersection right there, you're going to want to make sure you get an even and straight line before you move on. So now I need to dimension this. And again, I'm going to start by just going around in a circle. So let's see, this section is 0.5. And you'll notice my whole model changed sizes. That is completely okay. My overall size from here to here is actually 1 inch. So I'm going to change that to 1. My thickness for this section right here is actually going to be, we have to do a little bit of math. So we have to subtract 0.375 from 1. And the reason we have to do that is in our drawing, you'll notice that the dimension line goes from the top edge here to where the construction line is down below. But I know that the difference from the bottom to the construction line is 0.375. So that's 0.625 for right here. So that gives me that bit. And then I need to subtract from the distance in order to dimension this line right here. I have 2.5, but I can subtract 1 from, or I can subtract again to get that area. So the dimension I am looking for there is going to be, let's see, if we do 2.5 minus the 0.625, which gives us that distance in there, and then we subtract the 0.375, it's going to give us 1.5. So we're going to come in here, change this guy to 1.5. And there I go. So now that's similar to the shape that I'm seeing inside of my drawing. So I need to add another construction line. So I'm going to grab my line tool and I'm going to come below my model. I'm going to draw a line, and then I am going to select my line and push my construction key, and it's going to change that to a dashed line. I now need to dimension the distance from this line to the bottom of the model, which is 0.375. So now I'm finished with this sketch, so I'm going to hit my green check mark. I'm going to use my view cube to rotate back to the isometric view. And I'm going to grab my Revolve tool. I'm going to choose this L shape as my face, select my Revolve axis, and choose that. And that is not at all the way it was supposed to revolve. What is going on? Oh, nope, that's right. I was looking at it from a funny angle. So if you're unsure, make sure you have your front view as your front, because this is exactly the shape I needed, but gosh, did it look strange from that other angle. So now I'm going to hit the green check mark and we are good to go. So now I need to create a new sketch on this interior flat surface right here. And I'm going to rotate down to the front, and what I need to do is I need to place a point so I can create a hole. So I'm going to choose point, and I'm going to place this here. Now you'll notice in the drawing it's indicating that we have 1.65 from the origin. Now, my drawing is not completely on the origin, so I am going to guess that it's probably closer to 1.5. So I'm going to dimension from here to the top edge of the circle as 1.5. And that looks pretty consistent with what I'm seeing inside of the pictures on slide 23. So I'm going to close that sketch, and I'm going to rotate back to my isometric view. I'm going to select my hole tool. I'm going to pick this right here, and then I'm going to change this to a simple hole and through. And what I am then going to do is I am going to set that diameter to its correct diameter, which is, I believe, 0.5. Let me enlarge my image and double check. Yep, it is indeed 0.5. So we are going to change this to 0.5, simple and through. I'm going to hit my enter key. It's going to update. I'm going to hit the check mark. And the last thing I have to do is I need to go to my features panel and hit the drop down arrow next to linear pattern and choose circular. And I'm going to change from part pattern to feature pattern. And I'm going to select this circle. And my axis of pattern, I am going to actually choose this circle on the inside. And 360 degrees is completely fine, but I need to change the instance. So I need to know how many of these I need, which is 10. I'm going to hit the enter key. There's all of my holes. I'm going to hit the check mark, and this is complete. So now I can just close my document, and I'm all finished with the circular pattern feature. All right, everyone, we are now going to take a look at the rectangular pattern tool. So you'll notice I'm in the 122 CAD Models folder, and I'm going to hit Create and choose Document. I'm going to name this 1.2.2 Rectangular Pattern with my last name in the name. I'm going to hit OK, and then it's going to load my workspace. So the directions for the rectangular pattern tool start on slide 27, and I am actually going to create my sketch on the front view this time. So I'm going to choose Sketch, I'm going to choose my front plane, and then I'm going to use my view cube to rotate to the front. On slide 27, it says to create a 6-inch wide by 4-inch high rectangle and extrude the rectangle to a depth of 0.5 inches. So I'm going to grab my corner to corner rectangle, and I am just going to draw a rectangular shape. I am going to dimension this so that it is 6 inches wide and so that it is 4 inches high. Now you'll notice that this is off of my plane. That is completely fine. So now that I've dimensioned it, I'm going to hit the green check mark. I'm going to return to an isometric view, and I am going to extrude this face to a depth of 0.5. So I'm going to change this to 0.5. I'm going to hit my enter key so I get a preview. That is a depth of 0.5, and then I'm going to hit my green check mark. So now what I have to do next is I have to place a peg on the front corner so that way I can use it for my rectangular pattern. So I'm going to create a new sketch, and I'm going to do that on the front surface of this object. And then I'm going to use my front view cube. I'm now going to get my circle tool, and I'm going to come to this lower left-hand corner, and I'm just going to create a small circle. I'm then going to grab my dimension tool, and the diameter of this circle is 0.3 inches. So I'm going to hit 0.3. Okay. And then I have to not only dimension the size of this, but the actual location as well. So I am going to go from the edge of the circle to the left edge of the rectangle, and that needs to be 0.5 inches. And then I need to go from the edge of the circle to the bottom of the rectangle, and that also needs to be 0.5. Once I've dimensioned the size and the location, I can then close this sketch and return to my isometric view. I'm going to grab my extrude tool, and I'm going to very carefully click inside of that circle, and I need to change this extrusion to a depth of 0.25. So I'm going to type 0.25. I'm going to hit enter for a preview. You'll see it makes a nice peg right there. And I'm going to hit the check mark. So the next thing I need to do is I need to use the rectangular feature tool. So you'll see the menu options that we need to complete on slide 28. But what I need to do is come up here and I'm going to select the linear pattern tool. So I'm going to first change my drop-down menu to feature pattern. And then I'm going to select that peg. I'm just going to select the top surface of it. Then I need to select my direction. So I'm going to click direction. And I'm going to click this bottom edge. And you'll notice that it added a second peg. And that's because we have 2 instances set. I actually need a total of 6 instances spread 1 inch apart. So I'm going to type 6 and hit enter. And you'll see that it now puts 6 pegs across the bottom of the model. Now I need to add a second direction. So I'm going to click the second direction box. Move this over a little bit. And now it wants me to select my direction that I need. So I'm going to select this side. And then my instances, I am going to need 4. I'm going to hit enter. And you'll notice that they go to the bottom and are red. What I need to do is I need to change that to the opposite direction by clicking that arrow. And it's going to place those pegs on our surface. Once I have those in there, I'm going to click the check mark and that model is complete. So I'm just going to come over here to my menu and close that document. All right, so the next model that we are going to work on is the base plate. The directions for the base plate start on slide 30. You're probably going to want to zoom in your browser or enlarge that image so that way you can easily see the dimensions that we're working with, though I will point them out to you as we go through. So I am going to, from my 122 CAD Models folder, I am going to create a new document. I am going to name this 122 base plate and hit OK. And I am going to, again, start my sketch on the front view. So I'm going to click Sketch, choose the front, and then I'm going to use my view cube to rotate. So looking at the blueprint on slide 30, this is basically a rectangle that has some extra features added to it. So I'm going to start by creating a rectangle that is 11 inches wide and 4 inches tall. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and I am just going to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to dimension this to 11 inches wide. And I am going to dimension this to 4 inches tall. Now, again, for those of you who are on a Mac or a computer that has a trackpad that allows you to zoom by pinching, you can pinch to zoom just like that. And then we can hold the control key and 2 fingers to be able to very carefully recenter that so it's visible for us. So that is how we can recenter that image. So now that I have dimensioned this rectangle, I'm going to return to my isometric view. And I am going to actually extrude this. And I should have hit my green check mark because I hit extrude, it auto ended my sketch. That's a little trick you can do. I don't recommend it because you can end up with some wonky outcomes from that. So the thickness of this overall rectangle is 0.5. So I'm going to change this to 0.5 in depth and hit the return key. Then I'm going to hit my green check mark. Now there's a couple of things that I could do before moving on, but I am actually going to, so I can either place the points for the holes that are in the center, or I can fillet the edges. I am actually going to place the points in the center because I think placing those and doing the holes is the easiest next step. You could fillet the corners to make them rounded, but I'm actually going to do that last. So I am going to click New Sketch. I'm going to choose my front view. I'm going to rotate to the front. And I need a total of 4 points to be placed. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a second sketch on this object, and it's going to be to place the points to create the holes on the front face. So I'm going to hit Sketch, I'm going to click on the front of this, and then I'm going to rotate to my front view. Now I need to place these points kind of carefully so they don't get interlocked together. And I'm going to dimension as I go. So the first point that I'm actually going to place is over here on this edge. And then I'm going to drop my point tool and I'm going to dimension from this point to this edge. And that distance, according to our drawing, is 0.4375. And I'm going to hit enter. I also need a point at the same distance, but from this edge. So I'm going to grab my point tool. I'm just going to eyeball it over here. And then I am going to dimension it from here to here. And that is 0.4375. Now, these also need to be 2 inches from the top edge. So I'm going to dimension the point from here to here. And change that to a flat 2. And then I'm going to do the same thing from here to here and change that to a flat 2. So those are my 2 outer holes. I have a hole or a point that I need to place kind of close to the center. So I'm just going to place that point, and then I am going to dimension it from here to this edge as 5.5. And then I also need to dimension it from here to the top at 2. And then I have one point that I need to place still, and that's the one that is over here next to this one. So I'm going to drop that point down here. I'm going to dimension it from here to here. And that is going to be 1.5. And then I need to dimension it from here to the top edge and put it at 2. Okay, so now I've placed all of those points. So I can close my sketch. And I am going to return to my isometric view. And now I'm going to use the hole tool to create my different holes. Now, we need to read this graphic carefully because it gives us some information about what type of holes these are. So we actually have 2 countersink holes, and those are the 2 holes on the end. And we can tell they're countersink holes because it gives us a degree in our hole in the dimension. So we know that it's 0.25 diameter and the hole goes completely through. And then the upper diameter is 0.5 with an 82 degree angle. So I am going to grab my hole tool and I'm going to select both of those points because they have the same dimensions. And just like I did in my hole problem, I'm going to choose Countersink. And now I'm just going to fill in that information. So the inside diameter of our hole is going to be 0.25. The diameter that goes across the top of the countersink is 0.5, so we can leave that. But this is 82 degrees. So I'm going to put 82. I'm going to hit enter. It'll make those adjustments. And then I'm going to hit the check mark. Now, just like before when we had our hole problem, the other points that I had disappeared. So I need to go back to sketch 2 and turn on that visibility again so I can see those other points. Now, this point right here is going to turn into just a simple hole that goes all the way through, and same with this one. They're the same style of hole. So I'm going to grab the hole tool, and I'm going to click on both points, and I'm going to change this to a simple hole, and the diameter of that hole is actually 0.3125. Okay, and then I'm going to hit enter and click the green check mark. So now I've done all 4 of those holes. So if I rotate to the front, you can see that I have 2 simple holes that go through and 2 countersink holes, which is exactly what we need based upon that blueprint. So I'm going to rotate back over. And the thing that I am still missing is the fillet on the corners right here. So I'm going to use the fillet as a feature. And so what I am going to do is I need to fillet this to a 0.5 radius on all 4 corners. So I'm going to choose fillet, and I'm going to very carefully select the 4 lines that make up these corners. And I'm going to rotate over here and select this guy. I can then rotate back using my view cube, and this has to go to 0.5. I'm going to hit enter so it previews it, and I'm going to hit the green check mark. So now I have a total, so now I've done the holes that are on the front and the filleted edge. If we review our drawing, the only thing that we are missing is that we are missing 4 additional holes on the bottom. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to rotate to what is essentially the back of this model. So I'm going to hit back, and I'm going to start a new sketch on the back of here. And I'm going to move this out of my way. And I'm going to place 4 points to indicate the location of these holes. So if we look, those holes are located in the 4 corners, and they are located about, I'm going to say they are probably about 1/4 of an inch in, looking at that blueprint. We don't actually have a measurement, but we're gonna work on it. So if we look at the blueprint, it actually has us centering them right there where that point pops up. So, and what that is actually the center mark for the fillets that we created. So we're going to use that as a guide to place those points. And I'm going to finish my sketch. And now if you look at the information on the back of this, on the back side of the blueprint, it gives us a weird little bit of information. And that is that it says it's an 832 UNC hole. What that's talking about is actually how many threads are inside of that. So if you don't know, every kind of bolt and drill that does threading has a different size. So 832 UNC tells us that there are 32 threads per inch, and that the basic major diameter would be 0.1640. So that means the diameter of this hole is 0.1640. So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to grab my hole tool, and I'm going to select all 4 of these points. Let me move my hole menu over here. Now you'll remember that in order to do a threaded hole, we had to choose blind, okay? And what that allowed us to do was, didn't let us determine the threads. If we wanted to actually put threads in here, we would have to do a blind in last, but then we have to have it merge with a different part. So we are actually just basically going to do a simple hole. I am going to leave it in the blind, or I can just make it through, either one. But what we do need to indicate here is that our diameter is not all the way through, actually. And that is why we need a blind hole. Because if you look at the second line of the dimensions, there's an odd symbol. And that symbol actually represents depth. So you'll see here that this indicates depth, and we need to change that depth to 0.2875. And then that diameter is based on the 832 UNC, so that is 0.1640. So 0.1640. I'm going to hit my enter key for a preview, and then I am going to hit the check mark. Okay, so now if I rotate back to the front of my model, you'll notice that those holes are on the back, but not on the front, just like in our blueprint. So now this model's finished. So I am going to close my document, and I'm ready to move on to the next one.